In the years leading up to the AIDS epidemic, the goals of the LGBT movement were liberation and social freedom, often putting them in an adversarial relationship with the government. But everything changed in the early 80s. In Los Angeles in 1981, a group of previously healthy gay men developed a rare lung disease. At the same time in New York, a group of men were found to have a rare and aggressive cancer. By the end of the year, nearly half of the gay men with depleted immune systems had died. In 1982, evidence suggested that the cause of the immune deficiency was sexual, and it was initially called gay-related immune deficiency, or GRID. But by September, the CDC had to use the term AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, for the first time. In 1984, the National Cancer Institute announced that they had found the AIDS-causing virus, retrovirus HTLV3, and in 1986 it was renamed HIV, or Human Immunodeficiency Virus. During the AIDS epidemic, the LGBT community was faced with a government that actively mocked their existence and their struggles. People with AIDS and the gay community at large were attacked by the government and religious groups, often calling AIDS gay cancer and God's punishment for homosexuals. This even went so far that in 1986 in California, a vote was put forward to quarantine all people with AIDS, a movement that had no medical foundation. By the mid-80s, the LGBT community had learned to be its own advocates. AIDS organizations and marches had sprung up all over the nation, demanding fair treatment and research into this deadly disease. In years before, the gay and lesbian communities were divided, but during the AIDS crisis, lesbians were often the only people who were willing to help out at hospitals. This created a much closer bond between the two sides of the community. In 1982, Michael Callan and Richard Berkowitz published How to Have Sex in an Epidemic and introduced safe sex to gay men. But in 1987, the government banned the use of federal funds for any campaigns promoting gay sex. This essentially banned ads specifically targeting gay men, and any ads doing so needed to be privately funded. Ad campaigns by the government highlighted other groups that were less likely to get HIV or AIDS. Meanwhile, other campaigns not produced by gay groups used fear as a preventative measure instead of teaching ways to be safe. In 1984, a blood test was developed to test for HIV with the hope that a vaccine would be ready in 2 years. While this didn't work out the way they had planned, by 1994 there was a non-blood HIV test, and in the meantime they used the blood test to screen blood donations to prevent blood transfusion-related contraction. There have been many efforts to remember the names of those who've been lost to AIDS, but the most famous is the AIDS Memorial Quilt, made up of over 48,000 3x6-foot panels. The last time it was completely displayed, it covered the entire National Mall in Washington, D.C. Since the late 90s, HIV and AIDS numbers have been going down, but today more than 1.2 million people in the U.S. are living with HIV, and 1 in 8 of them don't even know it. The only way to finally end this disease is to continue the conversation about it and reduce the stigmatization of people who have it.